Al Jazeera Podcasts.
Today, the divisive U.S. election rhetoric that's put Puerto Rico in the spotlight.
There's literally a floating island of garbage in the middle of the ocean right now. Yeah, I think it's called Puerto Rico.
On the island, Puerto Ricans can't vote for U.S. president, but on the mainland, they can. So in swing states like Pennsylvania, could they change the course of the U.S. election? I'm Natasha Del Toro, and this is The Take.
My name is Victor Martinez. I've been doing radio and television for the last 30 years here in the United States. We have a morning show called El Relajo de la Mañana. We have 5 radio stations in the state of Pennsylvania, Philadelphia, Allentown, Reading, Lancaster, York, and Harrisburg. Our audience is about 250,000 Latinos in the state. And so we are in our studios here in Allentown.
Is that Allentown behind you?
Yes. As a matter of fact, this is the downtown Allentown. Downtown is what's known as the barrio. This is where the Latinos live. So right here is where the Latinos are at, the Puerto Rican. This is where they're at. Allentown has a 55% Latino population. So Latinos are actually the majority.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today. We're really, really excited to talk with you here on The Take. So I know that you've already voted. So on Tuesday, that's not what you're going to be doing. You're going to be out hosting your radio show, talking to your community there in Allentown, Pennsylvania. But for people who maybe are less familiar with your community, give us some details about your community.
So Pennsylvania has about 1 million plus Latinos. Out of the Latino community, Puerto Ricans are the majority of the population here in the state of Pennsylvania. We also have Dominicans, Colombian, Mexicans, but that's why the Latino vote has become such an important block in this election cycle, because of the fact that we have 600,000 eligible Latino voters that in an election so close could pretty much decide who could be the winner of the 19 electoral votes in Pennsylvania and possibly the president of the United States.
And interesting that there's such a huge population of Puerto Ricans in Pennsylvania. I live in Florida, where there's an enormous population group. You also think of New York, but Pennsylvania is a state that maybe is lesser known, that the Puerto Rican community has grown so much there in recent years. Maybe you can help me understand, why are Puerto Ricans moving to Allentown?
Listen, Puerto Ricans started to come to the Lehigh Valley back in 1942. So back in 1942, Puerto Ricans started to come here to work in steel mills, and it has been growing ever since. So Latinos and Puerto Ricans didn't just show up here in the Lehigh Valley a few months ago or a few years ago. We've been here for decades. Now, why? Why the Lehigh Valley? Why is it growing so much? You have the Amazon distribution center here. You have the Walmart, the QVC, the Dollar General, all of these major corporations. You can earn here in the Lehigh Valley $25, $30 an hour. And with about $1,800, you can have a 4-bedroom home with a basement and a backyard. And so we started calling our cousins and our friends in New York and say, hey, listen, you're making $25 in New York. Come on down. And so they keep coming.
What's interesting about this community is that in Puerto Rico, which is a U.S. territory, people there are American citizens, but they aren't allowed to vote in national elections. Here on the mainland, however, they certainly can. And in Pennsylvania, where the margins between Trump and Harris are almost negligible, that could really make a big difference. So talk to me about how will that play out?
So first, just to let you know, in the last census, Pennsylvania became the 3rd largest state with the biggest Puerto Rican community. It used to be New York, New Jersey, and then other states. It's now New York, Florida, Pennsylvania, and then New Jersey. Puerto Rico is not a state. It's a commonwealth. So Puerto Ricans cannot vote in the presidential election. Now, the interesting part here is that there's actually more Puerto Ricans out of Puerto Rico than there is in Puerto Rico. So Puerto Rico has a population of about 3.4, 3.5 million citizens or residents. There's about 6 million Puerto Ricans outside of Puerto Rico. So there's a lot of Puerto Ricans in the United States.
And in battleground states.
North Carolina, Arizona, Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania. There's a lot of us in those swing states. Pennsylvania not only being the one with the biggest electoral votes, but also out of those swing states, the one with the biggest Puerto Rican community as well.
And so you could say with 19 electoral votes, Pennsylvania is kind of a crucial state for whoever is going to be the next president to win.
Absolutely. I mean, again, whoever wins this 19 electoral votes could very well win the presidency of the United States.
And again, when you're talking about very narrow margins between Trump and Harris, this particular group, Puerto Ricans, could make a big difference. Now, we know that Trump is going to be making a campaign appearance there, his first one, on Tuesday in Allentown.
I think no president's done more for Puerto Rico than I have. So thank you. That's really nice.
And we should bring up this weekend, a Trump surrogate, a so-called comedian named Tony Hinchcliffe, who I'd never heard of, made a really bad racist joke at a rally in New York City.
It is absolutely wild times. It really, really is. And, there's a lot going on. Like, I don't know if you guys know this, but there's literally a floating island of garbage in the middle of the ocean right now. Yeah. I think it's called Puerto Rico.
Now, first of all, I don't know why that would have been considered funny. There was nothing funny about it. It was actually deeply offensive. But not just that, it was confusing. I mean, again, Puerto Ricans are so important to the vote in Pennsylvania. So it's kind of hard to understand why he would make this joke with just days before the election.
Not only that, real quick, remember, he also said that joke in Madison Square Garden, where the largest Puerto Rican community in the entire country is. More than 1 million Puerto Ricans live in New York City. So he chose the city with the majority of Puerto Ricans in this country to call Puerto Rico an island of trash.
It's really baffling. And maybe, Victor, you could tell me a little bit about what's the history between Trump and the Puerto Ricans?
Well, other than Trump is a New Yorker, born and raised in New York, he knows the Puerto Rican community. I mean, the Puerto Rican parade, which is the largest parade in the city of New York, goes right in front of his building every year and has been for the last 60, 70 years. Politically, there has not been a good relationship between the Puerto Rican community and Donald Trump. In 2017, we had the largest hurricane that hit Puerto Rico, Hurricane Maria.
Hurricane Maria left a path of devastation and destruction across the Caribbean and in Puerto Rico. The death toll from the storm has been disputed, particularly in Puerto Rico. Until recently, the number stood at 64, but findings from a report commissioned by the governor raised that number to nearly 3,000.
And the response from the Trump administration and the U.S. government wasn't the best. Not only that, after Congress approved funding to help Puerto Rico during this moment of crisis, Trump himself withheld that funding and didn't release the funding. Then he visited Puerto Rico, and while he was there, very famous video of him throwing paper towels to the people who gathered to see him and to hear him in Puerto Rico. That was taken as an insult, as a disrespect, right? You have people who are devastated, who are in need, who don't have food, electricity, and you come in and you start throwing paper towels at them. And then Sunday, this happened. And I will say this, because a lot of people who are Trump fans have come to me and said, well, Victor, Trump didn't say that. Why are you blaming Trump? A comedian said it, not him. But 2 days after, 24 hours after, we have yet to hear Donald Trump apologize. I mean, Trump is very well known and very famous for real quick going to social media and posting comments or defending himself or criticize or insult people. But yet, this happened at his rally. He needs this voting bloc, and he hasn't yet made a statement officially on his behalf. Listen, it wasn't me. I don't agree with this comedian. He wasn't part of what we intended to do. And that's why so many of us are upset at Donald Trump and his campaign.
Yeah, he didn't disavow this comedian's statements. I mean, he could have done it right there and then on the stage, and he didn't at any point disavow what Hinchcliffe said. So what has the reaction then been amongst Puerto Ricans, and even some Puerto Rican celebrities?
Yeah. Well, with my audience, I can tell you they are very upset.
I'm Manny Torado. I'm Puerto Rican and a U.S. Army veteran. And I just want to say that Tony Hinchcliffe's joke was both offensive and racist, to a Puerto Rican veteran like myself and other Puerto Rican veterans like my brother Ray, who also...
And the interesting thing is that throughout this election cycle, we were all wondering, because we really haven't heard much from artists like Bad Bunny or Jennifer Lopez or Ricky Martin. They really have stayed a little bit in the background. The minute that audio was published in social media, they all came out. Bad Bunny came out and published videos of Kamala Harris, obviously supporting her. Jennifer Lopez, Ricky Martin, Luis Fonsi, Lin-Manuel Miranda, Mark Anthony as well. So this was kind of the last straw. This was the key that opened the door. And now all of these major Puerto Rican superstars are out there. And the audience have seen it, have seen the way the artist has responded, and they are responding the same way.
And again, just in the lead up to the election, I imagine that it could really influence voters who maybe were on the fence. But you did mention something interesting, that there are some pro-Trump Puerto Ricans. I'm talking to you from Florida, and I know a lot of Puerto Ricans who are in favor of Trump. Maybe you could talk to me if you have any friends that you've talked to who are pro-Trump. How do they defend Trump and these statements, and what do they like about Trump?
Well, before the Puerto Rico island garbage comment, a lot of the Trump Republican, Latino, Puerto Rican supporters will mention the economy, will mention that they were doing better, that things were cheaper when Trump was president. There's a lot of people who are very conservative, very religious within the Latino and Puerto Rican community. And so the Republican Party has been able to position themselves as the conservative family values party. And that's appealing to a lot of Latino conservative that believe that party is the one that defends their beliefs. So they blame Kamala Harris for what's happening in the border. They bought into the whole Kamala Harris, it was the czar and she didn't do anything in the border. And that's why all these criminals and rapists and drug dealers and drug traffickers are crossing the border. And so because of that, they have decided that they're going to support Donald Trump. Mind you, the immigration problem has been here for decades. Donald Trump could have closed the border when he was president. So that's what I try to explain to my Latinos who use those as their points of why they support Donald Trump.
Why the Harris campaign is fighting hard for Pennsylvania's Puerto Rican vote. That's after the break. So, Victor, let's talk a little bit then about the Harris campaign. The Harris campaign has been courting Latinos in Pennsylvania, knowing just how important it is to appeal to this demographic. And they're really going after the Puerto Rican voters.
Puerto Rico is home to some of the most talented, innovative, and ambitious people in our nation. And Puerto Ricans deserve a president who sees and invests in that strength.
Now, I know you've endorsed Kamala Harris.
Yeah.
You have hosted your radio show twice from the White House.
Yeah.
What has the Harris campaign done to appeal to Puerto Rican voters?
Well, I will tell you, the Biden campaign started reaching out to the Latino and the Puerto Rican votes started in March. We started getting advertising, radio advertising for the Biden campaign in March, which is unheard of. I've been doing this for 30 years in different markets in Spanish radio, and usually we get the campaigns that will invest in advertising the last 4 or 5 weeks of a campaign. We haven't seen that from the Trump campaign. I mean, we are just a few days before the election. The Trump campaign has yet to spend $1 in radio in Spanish advertising to try to reach to the Latino community. So that gives you an idea of where things at. The Biden then turned into the Harris campaign have had a message of inclusiveness, of we can work together. Yes, we do have a problem in the border, but we don't need to trash people and a whole community. That has been the message of the first Biden campaign and then continue with the Harris campaign. Now,
I do want to push back a little bit. While they are not making the racist, denigrating comments about Latinos, they have failed to deliver on a lot of promises to the Puerto Rican community. For example, they haven't done anything meaningful really regarding the Puerto Rico status. You know, they've said that they are in favor of self-determination for Puerto Rican people, but yet they haven't given, Congress, they allow them to have these referendums where Puerto Ricans vote.
Out of Puerto Rico today, voters overwhelmingly approved statehood in a non-binding referendum that would make the U.S. territory the 51st state. Congress has final say over whether to approve the outcome of the referendum.
But then those referendums don't actually go anywhere, because Congress hasn't given Puerto Ricans the ability to actually do anything about those referendums. I think it's important to keep that in mind as well, that, what can Democrats do to actually deliver on these promises for Puerto Ricans? And, so they're not just paying lip service.
Let's be honest, that's a really hot potato. In order to make Puerto Rico a state, you need an overwhelming majority of Congress in order to do that, and that's not going to happen. We've had a number of Republicans who have said that's a non-starter. They believe that if Puerto Rico or Washington, D.C. becomes state, that would mean 2 more Democratic senators or a majority Democratic House of Representatives, which I disagree. I mean, you have Puerto Ricans who are Republicans as well. Right now, Jennifer Gonzalez, the candidate for governor in Puerto Rico and the Puerto Rico representative in Congress, it's a Republican, a Trump supporter.
And this is a moment where an important voter bloc is up for grabs. So I guess the question again is, what do these parties need to do to grab the Puerto Rican vote?
Listen, the Puerto Rican vote is no different than any other bloc. We want safer streets. We want better schools. We want a better economy. We want health care. We want to be able to earn a living and enjoy life. So both parties, both candidates have to make their case. Which one of you is going to give us, just like the rest of us in this country, a better future?
And for you, the party that's making the better case is the Democratic Party, is Kamala Harris.
For me, absolutely. I mean, again, unfortunately, the Republican Party has allowed to be taken over by the MAGA, Donald Trump wing of the party, the extreme side of the party. I will tell you, I don't consider myself a Democrat. I consider myself an independent. I have supported Republican candidates. I used to live in Florida. I supported Jeb Bush when he was governor. I actually supported Marco Rubio when Marco Rubio was the Speaker of the House in Florida. Puerto Ricans who were elected officials who were Republicans, I supported them. The reason why you will say, became a Democrat and supported Joe Biden and supported Hillary Clinton and supported Kamala Harris, it's because Trump just brings this, I will say it, this hate with him, and that has now passed on to his followers. We are all criminals. We're all trafficked. We're all traffic drug dealers. We're all rapists. We are taking people's jobs. When let's be real, we're not taking anybody's job. I mean, Donald Trump had a town hall at Univision, the Spanish television network, and he was specifically asked by a farm worker. And the farm workers told him, I pick broccolis. My hands pick up your broccolis. And you want to deport the people who pick up the fruits and vegetables. If you take them out, who's going to pick those fruits and vegetables? I mean, so that's why I became a Democrat, if you will, and such a person against Donald Trump.
It's interesting that you mentioned Florida, where you used to live and where I currently live. And we know that the Cubans and the Venezuelans have formed a really strong voter bloc here for Republicans. I know you've said that you would like to see Puerto Ricans maybe take a page from their book. Why would you like to see them do that?
Well, not only Puerto Ricans, all Latinos should learn from the Cuban community in Miami. They are registered. They come out and vote. I mean, think about it. Out of the 2 state senators in Congress in Washington, one is Cuban. And the one previous to him, so you have right now Marco Rubio. The previous senator was Mel Martinez, another Cuban. So I tell all Latinos, look at that. That's what we need to do. We need to register. We need to vote. That is the only way that we can expect any politician, any government to respect us, to make sure that we're sitting on the table, to make sure that we're taken into consideration when time comes and making policies that affect us and our community. If you look at Miami, the mayors are Cuban. And again, it's just them utilizing their political power, and we need to respect that, and we need to learn from that.
And at the moment, that doesn't seem to be quite the case with the Puerto Rican voters. So people are coming for economic opportunity and yet still hold on to deep cultural ties to the island of Puerto Rico, to our culture, to our identity. It's still very near and dear to our hearts.
Yeah, we haven't been able to cut that umbilical cord. I will tell you, that's one of the reasons why a lot of Puerto Ricans don't get involved in politics. I call it my grandfather syndrome. So this is not scientific. This is just a theory that I came up with. My grandfather, which lives in Florida, has been there for 30 years and he's 90 years old. But if we call him right now, he will tell you he's going back any minute. As soon as things get better, he's going back. Well, he's been here for 30 years. He's 90. He's not going back. But that's what happened with us. We have this dream. We have this nostalgia of wanting to go back, and we will go back. So what I tell my community, what I tell the Latinos in general, the Puerto Ricans, is it's okay to hope. It's okay to dream. We all want to go back, of course. Who doesn't want to live in an island, on a beautiful island, surrounded by beautiful beaches in the Caribbean, right? But in the meantime, you live here. Your kids go to school here. You drive the roads here. You pay taxes here. So get involved and vote. And one day, when you finally get to go, it's okay. You did what you were supposed to, and it's time now to enjoy life over there. But in the meantime, get involved here.
Bueno, pues Victor, muchísimas gracias. Buenísimo hablar contigo. Thank you so much for being here on The Take. And we're all going to be waiting to see what happens on Election Day.
Un placer estar contigo. It's been a pleasure to be here with you. If you're watching this, get out and vote. Be part of the democracy. Be part of our political system. And we'll see what happens.
And that's The Take. What questions do you have about the U.S. elections? Let us know in the comments below. And if you want to catch more episodes like this one, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you can stay in the loop with all things Al Jazeera English. See you tomorrow.